Walk down Jakoberstrasse in the German city of Augsburg, and you will eventually come to a heavy wooden gate set into a high wall. Pass through it, and you leave the modern city behind. This is the Fuggerei, a walled settlement of 67 houses on 8 perfectly straight lanes, sitting on 15,000 square meters of ground. It has its own church, its own fountains, and 7 gates that are still locked at 10 o'clock every night. Roughly 150 people live here, and their rent, which was fixed by a deed signed on August 23, 1521, is exactly what it was 5 centuries ago. It has never been raised. Inside, the noise of traffic drops away, replaced by the sight of absolute, deliberate uniformity. The houses are nearly identical, 2 stories of golden yellow render, red-tiled roofs, and green doors. Each apartment has its own entrance directly off the lane, so no one has to share a stairwell. The ground floor flats have small gardens behind them. The upper flats have attics. Building began in 1516 under a master mason named Thomas Krebs, and by 1523, 52 houses were standing. The complex was carefully extended in the 19th and 20th centuries, which is how 67 became the final number. Behind most of those green doors are ordinary, modernized apartments, with running water, wiring, and the standard equipment of a 21st century life. But stop at house number 13, and you can look directly into the 16th century. It belongs to the museum now, and it has been left exactly as it was. The rooms are small, the ceilings are low, the layout is simple. But the point of the design, then and now, was dignity. A resident had an address of their own, a lockable door and a garden, rather than a bed in a crowded shared almshouse. That was the unusual part in 1521, and it is still the part the residents value most today. Further down one of the lanes, a stone plaque on a wall records the name of a former tenant. Between 1681 and 1694, a mason named Franz Mozart lived in this house. He was the great-grandfather of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and he lived here for the same reason everyone else did. He was a working man of Augsburg who had fallen on hard times. The conditions for entry have barely moved since Franz walked these lanes. An applicant must be Catholic, must have lived in Augsburg for at least 2 years, must show genuine financial need, and must be free of debt. Today, the Foundation receives 30 to 40 applications a year, against a waiting list of about 80 names. At the centre of the settlement stands St. Mark's, added in 1582. The church is here because the rent was never the whole of what the residents owed. The 1521 deed asks for 3 prayers a day: the Lord's Prayer, the Hail Mary, and the Creed, for the founder, Jakob Fugger, and his descendants. The founders put their reasoning plainly. The fortune they had received from God was to be repaid, first of all, to him. Fugger was financing Habsburg emperors and holding copper and silver interests across Central Europe. By building this settlement, he was also buying, in the accounting of his own church, a shortened stay in Purgatory. Today, the prayers are on the honour system. But the stone of these walls carries more recent scars. On the night of the 25th of February 1944, Allied bombers reached Augsburg, and about 70% of the Fuggerei burned. 730 people died in the city that night. Inside these walls, almost no one did. A bunker had been dug the year before, and some 200 residents were in it. The only death in the complex was the air raid warden, Georg Lehner. Using its own assets, the Foundation rebuilt the settlement to the original design, finishing in 1955. What you are walking through today is therefore mostly post-war masonry, laid precisely to a plan from 1516. The gates still close at 10. Residents still hold part-time jobs in the community, working the admissions desk, tending the gardens, acting as the night watch. And the rent is still exactly 1 Rhenish gulden a year, which converts today to 88 euro cents, 7 cents a month. To understand why there is a waiting list, you only need to know that a comparable flat outside these walls lets for over 850 euros a month. In 1521, that single gulden was worth somewhere between a week and a month of a working man's pay, depending on the trade you compare it to. It was never a token amount. It became one by standing completely still for 500 years. But why did it stand still? It is not sentiment, it is a term. Written into an agreement between the Fugger family and the city of Augsburg is a tax clause. The Fuggerei pays no municipal tax on the strict condition that its annual rent never rises above 1 Rhenish gulden. Raise the rent, and the exemption vanishes. Paying for that shortfall has been the foundation's business for 5 centuries. First, the interest on Jakob Fugger's 10,000 guilders, then the income from estates, and since the late 18th century, timber. Today, roughly 70% of the funding comes from Fugger forests, 10% from property elsewhere, and 20% from the visitors walking these lanes. When Ulrich, George, and Jakob Fugger founded this place in 1521, they meant it as an example of Christian charity. Today, it stands as an example of something else entirely: the sheer durability of a well-written contract. In the 5 centuries since this foundation was laid, the Holy Roman Empire dissolved, currencies collapsed, and the city outside burned and was rebuilt. But inside these walls, the forest still pays the bills, the gate still shuts at 10, and the rent is still 1 gulden.